Can you paint a landscape in just 3 colours? In today's video, I'm going to show you how. Welcome back to my channel. If we have not met before, my name is Michelle, and on this channel you'll find all things watercolour, as well as mixed media, drawing, even a little bit of business and motivation for artists too. Please do consider subscribing. If you click the bell icon, you'll get notified every time I have a new video for you. I make at least one free video a week here on YouTube on a Thursday with extra content for Patreon subscribers. Now, not that it's of any interest or importance, but I know that my regular viewers are going to make comments about it. Yes, I cut my hair off. It was annoying me. I do a lot of sports, including things like swimming and running and martial arts, and it was just getting on my nerves, so chopped it off. There you go. So let's go on with this week's tutorial. It's more of a colour mixing tutorial than a landscape tutorial, so I'm going to paint a little landscape, but it's not going to be, don't expect a step-by-step wonderful landscape tutorial. I've got lots of those for you, both free and paid. I'll explain more about that as we go through the video, but this is mostly a colour mixing tutorial, so I'm going to be showing you how you can take just 3 primary colours and mix everything you need for a landscape. So let's point the camera downwards and I'll show you exactly how it's done. So let's talk about choosing our 3 colours. Now, why would we use 3 colours? Well, working with 3 colours is what's called using a limited palette. So if you just use a small amount of colours, that's called a limited palette. Now, when people say limited palette, they can mean a couple of things. They may mean doing all of their painting with the same colours. That's not what we're talking about today. They may just mean restricting the amount of colours you use within one painting. Now, that's what I do because I like to own all the colours, as you can see, and this is just a few of them. I'm giving you permission to own all the colours. Of course, feed your children first. Let's be sensible about these things. Priorities. However, choosing just a few colours within a painting, particularly a landscape, is a really, really good idea. It allows everything to hang together nicely. You don't want to be adding in different colours here, there and everywhere. You don't want one colour blue in the sky, another one in the water that should be reflecting the sky. You don't want a third colour in the shadows. You want to have everything related. Now, using 3 is pretty extreme. You could go lower, and of course you can go higher. If you are just using 3, you'll need one of those colours to be a staining colour, and I would suggest that it's the blue, so we need a really strong dark colour. Otherwise, if we chose 3 colours that were really weak, we wouldn't be able to get a full range of tones. Now, I've got the cool versions here, so I've got some cool kind of turquoise based blues. I've got some pinky reds here, and I've got some sort of yellow, lemon yellows and mid-range yellows here. Now, the 3 colours that you choose depend on the subject matter. I want these colours to be fairly cool today, and pink can be really useful for mixing things like grey from, and I'll show you exactly how to do that later. But if you were doing a sunset, if there were lots of warm reds and oranges, peaches, coral reds and things like browns in, then you would want warmer colours. And so you can choose your colours depending on the subject that you're looking at. If you want a video on how to do that, I can do that as well. I do have other videos on planning your paintings, but we're going to stick to the cool colour palette today. And I'm going to show you how we can take each of these colours and mix a huge variety of colours, including greens, lilacs, all of the secondary colours and neutral shades like brown and grey too. So let's start by choosing our colours. I want a staining colour. Something like cerulean would not be strong enough. Sure, I could choose it, but I'd need to add something else in alongside it, and we're just having 3 this time. I'm going to choose this phthalo blue green shade by Jackman's Art Materials. If you don't know what the green shade means, it just means it tends a little bit more to the yellow end of the spectrum than the red end of the spectrum. If you're looking at this thinking, but it's blue, and not understanding any of that, it really doesn't matter for the purposes of this tutorial. Just think of it as phthalo blue. I'm also going to choose a pink. Let's choose this. It's one of my favourite pinks. It's Quinacridone Rose by Talons Rembrandt. And let's have a yellow. So let's have lots of different brands today. Let's go for Lemon Yellow by Daniel Smith. So I've put my 3 colours out. I've got some brushes here. If you're wondering what the paper is, it's just some SAA practice paper, which is similar to Bockingford. I'm not sure what that would relate to in other countries, just some form of practice paper. But as I said, we're just practicing colour mixing here today. I've drawn a little landscape here. It's not very good from a composition point of view because I've put a river in and a path, which really wouldn't look very good like that in a composition. However, I just want to have a little range of places to put different colours, shall we say. So that's what we're doing there. We're going to swatch the colours around the outside, and I'll show you then how they would sort of fit into a landscape. So let's start by looking at the blues. Now, with a blue like this, and this is often the case with these cooler blues, I'll swatch it for you. It's going to be rather strong and rather turquoise. Let's put it up here. Now, of course, I could use it in the sky just as it is there. However, certainly here in the UK, skies are rarely that cool, and you can end up, if your blue is too cool, you can end up with a really, a look of it being in the Arctic or something like that. Now, conversely, this strong blue here could work for maybe a Caribbean landscape or something like that, but for parts of sort of Central America and Europe, it can tend to be a little bit on the bright and the cold side. And so what I can do is I can warm this colour up a bit, and by warm it up, what I mean is make it go slightly into the lilac end of the spectrum. So I'm going to pop a small amount of pink in, and I do mean a small amount, because if you put too much in, what you'll do is you'll just turn this mix purple. So picking up really small amounts here. Let's be bold and pick up a bit. I'll get it wrong in a minute, I'll go too far and have to start again. But we're just starting to warm that colour up. So I'm not sure I've put enough in yet for it to show. So let's have a swatch and let's pop it here. Now, can you see already there's quite a difference in that colour? It's gone a little darker, but that's not the point. The point is that you can see it's a bit less turquoise, and certainly for here in the UK, it's a bit more realistic for a sky colour now. So what I can do is I can wet my sky and I can drop some little bits of this colour in. So let's pop some water on here. I've also got some paper towel here, so you'll need a little bit of paper towel or a rag, and I'm just going to start with what's already on my brush actually, and get the idea that there might be some clouds in here. And you want to be looking as well at the darkest part of the sky being at the top of your picture, because there's something called aerial perspective that means skies tend to look lighter out there by the horizon. So popping some of this in. It's quite wet, so it's bleeding somewhat. I'm not even trying to stay in the side of the box, by the way. We're not going to worry about that because it's such a small area. And I'm just going to come down here a little bit and get some lighter blues down near the horizon. Leave a few white areas for clouds. Just picking up that puddle on the side there so it doesn't bleed in too much. And there we've got a really natural looking sky colour. I think it's much more realistic, certainly for the UK, than this brighter colour here. So I've drawn a little river down the bottom here, and water tends to reflect sky. So we're going to use that same blue, but this time I'm going to put a little bit more green in it because it'll also be reflecting things like the grasses that are growing around the edge. So I'm going to take that same colour, start with that same colour, but this time I'm going to drop a little bit of yellow in it. Now you only need the very tiniest amount of yellow in order to turn blue to green. So we're going to be very careful and try not to put too much in one go. If I just put a tiny drop in, what will happen is I'll just push this blue slightly more towards a turquoisey colour without going as far as making it full on green. So your water should reflect your sky colour. You should have at least, it doesn't have to be the exact same colour. You can put other colours in the water to the sky, but you want to be careful. Sometimes photographers mess around with filters and things, and the water ends up looking a completely different colour to the sky. I'm just putting some clean water on here. And it really is a good idea, certainly when painting, to have those colours related so that you have at least some of that sky colour in your water. So I'm going to put some of this colour in here. Now it's a little bright in places, so I can also go straight in and get some of that pink in and drop it straight actually on the paper there. Trying to get an idea as well of reflecting almost what's going on in the sky, so that we've got darker areas, this area out here. Again, I can put a little bit of pink in where I see it. We're getting some really interesting colours there that are different to the sky, but yet because we're using the same blue, they are related. And just so we have a record, I'm going to swatch that colour we used here up the top. Now let's think about getting some sort of light sandy beige colour on this pathway here. I've wiped the palette out, I mean not completely because I'm going to be using blue anyway, so it doesn't matter, but I just wanted to get some of the paint out because we need this colour to be very light. So we're starting almost with clean water, and we'll start with the lightest of the colours, which will be the yellow. It'll go slightly green, of course, as it hits the blue that's in there. What we're doing now is we're mixing all three primaries together. Now, when you mix three primaries together, you always get a neutral. If you have warm colours and you have majority yellow or red pigment mixed, then you will end up with browns. And if you have majority blue pigment mixed, and particularly if you're using cooler colours, you will end up with grey. So we've got some watery green in here. I'm going to add a bit of pink to it, and that third primary will now start to neutralise that colour. If you know your colour opposites, you'll know that red or pink and green are opposite colours, so they'll start to neutralise down. Can you see that green is starting to get much duller as the pink goes in, and eventually it will become a neutral. It's still a bit green at the moment. So just adding tiny amounts, and as I said, this is a very watery mix. You just have to keep adding until you get the balance right. You may find it goes slightly sort of purple. If it goes purple, then you know that you've got too much red and pink in. You need to add a bit of yellow. We've got a colour here that's starting to look quite interesting in terms of a pathway. So let's have a swatch of this and see what it looks like. In fact, I think I'll put it here. Look at that, we've mixed a lovely soft sort of neutral grey path colour. So I'm going to paint that onto my path here. I'm just going to go straight on to dry paper here. And just so the edges don't appear too harsh, what I'll do is I'll clean and dry my brush, and I'll just sweep a damp brush down the edge there just so we soften that line. And here we've mixed a sort of a neutral, pale, beigey grey. Now, I haven't drawn much in the way of dark browns here, but perhaps we've got some trunks on our trees, or maybe there's some fence panels or something like that. So can we actually get a brown from these colours? As I said at the beginning, it's going to be rather tricky because we've got very cool colours here. But let's see what we can do. Let's tip this colour much more into the yellow and the pink end of the spectrum with a little bit of blue, and see what we can come up with in terms of warmer, more brownish colours. Of course, paths aren't always light grey. You may have a much stronger coloured pathway. That's gone a little bit pink, so I'm going to put a bit more yellow in. And let's see what sort of colour we've got now. Got a much stronger colour here. So let's have a look at this. There we have a very respectable brown. It's somewhat light, but that's probably because I've got a very watery mix here. If I were to add more blue to this, what should happen is it should start to go darker grey. You can see I've put too much in there, it's gone green. So let's just add more of that pink back in and add more of the yellow. Well, we've made a stronger brown there first of all, so let's swatch that one just for the sake of preserving it. So we've got another brown there. It's a bit pink because there was a little bit of undissolved pink on my brush. Let's spread that out a bit. There we are. So let's try again with our blue, and I'll be a little less heavy-handed this time. Says me doing exactly the same thing. But it's getting there, it's getting there. We've got sort of a greenish brown now. Let's swatch that one. Oh, actually, see, this is why you need to swatch. Once we swatch it out, that's pretty much grey. We can put more blue in and a bit more of the pink. And here we have a darker grey. So you can see the range of naturals and neutrals that can be produced even when we've got such a limited palette. So I've mixed all those greys and browns there. What I want to do now is mix a real strong sort of purplish grey to make some shadows on my clouds. So I'm going to take this colour here and I'm just going to adjust it because there's nothing wrong with it, but it's a bit on the brown side. So I'm going to reduce the amount of yellow in it by adding more blue and more pink. So let's go in here with a lot more pink. And you can see we've mixed a very respectable sort of mauve colour there. Now that could be a cloud shadow colour, but for me it's a bit too warm, so I'm going to put more blue in it. So I've made a really stormy blue grey now. Now that certainly would be a great colour for a stormy sky, but this is going to be more of a summery sky, so I want it a bit more lilac, so I'm going to put more pink in. Pinks tend to be very strong, so try to be restrained. I haven't been very restrained, so we'll try to be restrained, and we'll start to get the colour that I'm looking for. So if I swatch it here, there we are, look at that. That is a great colour for cloud shadows. So let's put a few in our little landscape. So I'm going to take clean water across the sky here, just very carefully. If you're careful with this, the underneath layer won't move much at all. It'll just soften slightly, which can actually look very nice. I'm going to swap to a smaller brush now, because this is a very strong colour. I just want a touch of it here and there. And I'm going to get some grey in. Shadows tend to be at the base of clouds, so that's a great place to put them. And we're starting to get a lot more depth to our tiny little sky now. So whilst that's drying, let's think about greens. So before we continue with our little miniature landscape and our colour swatching, let me tell you about my mini course. So I have a mini course for you. I'll put a picture up now. So mini courses are single projects. You get videos, you get materials lists, and you get the photograph. They're really, really cheap, under $20. In fact, the one I have at the moment, the 3-colour landscape you can see on the screen now, is currently at an introductory offer of $10. That'll be available for 1 week after this video, but even if you're watching this video in 6 months' time, they really are very inexpensive. I'll leave a link to this mini course project in the description of this video if you want a much more in-depth, completely step-by-step, full, large landscape to follow along with. Now, generally with a landscape, you want to think about having some warmer greens at the front and cooler greens further back. Now, our entire palette here is cool. We don't have any warm yellows, but we can have a green in the front that's a bit more bright and containing more of the yellow, and then a bit less of it further back. So that's something we can think about doing. So let's think about getting a fairly cool green in the background. So just mixing my yellow and my green here. We're going to tend very much towards turquoise colours because that's the palette that we're working with. So what I'll probably do is just use my pink to cool that colour down if it looks a bit too bright and unnatural. Let's swatch it first and see how it looks. It's not too bad. We can cool it down in places and sort of dull it down by putting that opposite colour, that pink, in. So I'm going to start at the back here. And you can see my sky isn't dry there, so some of these colours have bled up. If I was doing a proper painting, I would allow that to dry. Although you can, if you want to, you can get an impression of distant bushes and things in the background, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. I'm just going to let that happen. And then getting a tiny touch of pink on my palette. And you see how we can just neutralise that green in places, give the impression of some shadows. And we can mix a much brighter, more yellow green in the foreground here by adding some yellow in. I would generally do this sort of mixing on my painting actually, but let's pop some of that in there, and then I'll just show you how to mix on your painting itself, and we can add the yellow straight onto the paper here. And you can see how you can just get these beautiful bright greens, and although we're just working with one blue and one yellow, we can get a whole range of greens and even cool them down slightly, dull them slightly by adding in the pink. So let's do the same on the other side. So I have just allowed this to dry a little bit so it doesn't bleed too much anymore. But you can see that allowing that green to bleed up here can give the impression of bushes and trees. Now we've got everything a bit sort of mid-toned and light, and the path to me looks a bit wishy-washy. So what about getting some stronger darks in now? So all we have to do is use less water for our mixing. So I'm almost going to mix directly in here. And I want to get some darker greens that I can use for those distant trees. I don't want them to be too bright and too strong, so we're going to put a little bit of pink in. So you see here, just by mixing straight with these thicker colours here with less water, I can start to get much stronger greens. We've got this one here, and Just going to add a little pink to this. And I can get more muted shades. We've got almost a pine green there. What I'm going to do now is go in with that colour, but I'm going to add a little water so that it's not too strong. And we can then start to get an impression of perhaps some trees further back. Now I don't want them all to be the same colour. I do have a video all about painting sort of distant trees. If you're interested in that one, do have a search for that one. So let's put this in like this and go in between colours now. What about some that are a bit more blue? And then maybe want some more yellow in there to get some brighter colours as well. You can see that we start to get a variety of colours along that horizon line. I'm actually going to mix a bit of the pink and the yellow. I wouldn't normally mix polluting all of my colours like this because I do understand that paint is expensive. I'm lucky enough to sometimes at least to get some of my paints for free now. And I can get some browns in there as well. And so you can see that we can get this variety going along here. If it looks a bit harsh, I can do a little bit of blotting in places as well. And just getting a little of the sort of the greyish colour that's in my palette, I want to just smooth up that horizon line a little bit there. I can also use some of these darker greens where I want them to get things like grasses in. Now some of you know I often use watercolour pencils for this sort of thing, but we'll stick to our three colours today. Perhaps getting some smaller grasses further back. I can also, if I want to, add some clean water and pop in more darker areas of shadow where I see them. Maybe this area at the front is a bit too bright, a bit too plain. I can drop other colours over the top. Finally, since we're just doing swatches here, I think I want to do something with that path. It's looking too light now, it almost looks white. So just going to get a bit of the pink and the yellow. Mixing up a stronger, warmer colour there, and again I can swatch that colour. So look at that, we've got the sandy colour again, but it's a lot warmer this time. And I'm just going to water it down and take it all the way across my path. This is called glazing. I'm just going to adjust this colour, make it slightly darker and slightly warmer. Of course, if this was a proper painting I was doing, I would spend a lot more time getting details on that pathway. Maybe even some pebbles and stones, perhaps using some of these dark greys that we mixed earlier on. And just for the sake of an example, let's see how dark we can go with that yellow, see if we can make some sort of mustard type colours. There we are. So we can get quite a warmer yellow there. I could put some of that in the foreground here. Or even halfway up. One colour we haven't tried really is to get sort of almost a sunset pinky orange. That should be possible too. Now we don't need it in this painting, but you can see that if we want it, it's available to us. And even by using lemon yellow and a very bluish pink, a very cool based pink, we can still get some really bright warm colours. So we have a full range of browns and sunset colours there available to us too. I could paint this exact same painting in three completely different primary colours and get a different effect each time. And you can see that overall, as a colour palette, everything hangs together because we've mixed everything from just three colours. And just finally, we didn't need it here, but just to show you it's possible, I can mix my blue and my pink together and also get a really, really strong purple, which of course I can water down to make softer lilacs. Great for painting things like bluebells as well that might be in the landscape. And I can go far more into the pink as well and even get some magenta colours. So I hope you can see the vast array of colours that you can mix, and I haven't even started here. I could do so many more. Even within the greens, I could mix about 30 different greens just by using these three colours. It's also a fantastic painting exercise if you're a beginner, rather than just dabbing around and going into one colour and then the next and dumping everything on your paper. Try using a limited palette of three colours and see what you can produce. So before you leave this video, don't forget to pop into the video description. Not only can you find out about that course I was telling you about earlier and all my other courses, including my beginner's drawing and beginner's watercolor courses, but you also have the opportunity to download lots of free things. So I've got some free downloadable PDFs for you. I've even got a free watercolor course you can take. And if you enjoyed this video, I think you're really going to like my video where I expand on the color pink and tell you why, in my mind, it's one of the most essential colors to have in your palette. You can watch that video right now.